the Friars Club is definitely one of my favorite episodes of all time. It's combined with some very simple little stories that just really just worked and just stood out to me. One in particular, of course, is Kramer's story from this episode, which we'll get to that momentarily. So the episode, let's get right into it again. This is a fun episode. I have a lot I want to say about this episode. So this episode started off with George, like, you know, there's a deleted scene, but George is prancing around the streets going, Jude! It's Jude! It's Jude! I guess apparently they were going to have their wedding at this place called Leonard's, and they got mixed up and double booked. So the earliest they can now have the wedding now is June, because originally it was supposed to be Christmas. Then George wanted to delay it till spring, and of course George keeps trying to find ways to get out of it, and it's not working. Now it's delayed till June. And in a deleted scene, which kind of like set the tone for the episode, George is happy because the wedding's delayed, and then Susan's best friend / maid of honor, Hallie, broke up with her boyfriend. And I think George wants to, I think Jerry's kind of had his eye on her, or the other way is George wants to set them up. That way, hey, best friends love each other. They do a lot together, basically, and get along well. So, of course, the wheels are in motion, as they said. So they were getting ready to set up a date, and then Jerry mentioned that this guy, Pat Cooper, who's one of Jerry's sponsors, wants to try to get him in at the Friars Club, who's basically like a private club membership for like comedians and whatnot. So he was going to bring George, Susan, and Hallie. They can go on a double date, which sounds like a fabulous idea, right? Yeah, they went on that date, and basically the whole time it was Jerry and George talking to each other, and then Hallie and Susan talking to each other. So no one really, the men didn't really communicate well with their women that were there. But while they were there, of course, Jerry was told that, even though he wasn't a full member yet, he was told that the men had to wear jackets, which George had one, but Jerry didn't. So they let him borrow this one that had this Friars Club crest on it, which of course becomes a pivotal thing as to, just hot potatoes to trying to get that jacket returned back to the Friars Club. And also nearly costing Jerry his membership, which it may have, I can't remember though. But Elaine's story though, now this is an episode where Elaine never interacted with George or Kramer. She interacted with Jerry, but not the other two. So, at Peterman's office, they hired this new guy named Bob Grossman, who was played by Rob Schneider. And I didn't realize how big of a deal Rob Schneider was, but he is a great actor. So, Bob Schneider, Now, Rob Schneider, Bob Gross. Okay, Bob Grossberg's the character, Rob Schneider's the actor. How did I get it all mixed up? Anyways, so, they have a little meeting, and they welcome Bob. Peterman wants to sign him all the copy editing of the new catalog. Bob, though, has a hearing aid, and he's like, I'm sorry. And Peterman repeated like 2 or 3 times, he wants them to do the copy editing of the new catalog. After a while, Peterman gave it, don't worry about it. Elaine, you do it. And it starts with this strings where Elaine is suspicious this Bob guy is using his hearing aid as an excuse to not be able to get out of work. But the thing that's bothering Elaine is all the work that he's getting out of is getting piled on her, which is then frustrating her quite a bit. Like Jerry even came by the office to see her one day, and then of course Elaine tells her what's all going on. So then Jerry goes to the bathroom where Bob is to see if Bob could sense that Jerry was there. And Jerry thought he got a sense, but after telling Elaine about it a while, it's like, nah, I really don't think so. But then, before I go on further with the jacket, I gotta start, I wanted to save this for last, but I better start telling the story now, that way it all ties in. My favorite storyline from this episode is Kramer's. It's just so wacky. So, I guess, David Mandel, who's one of the producers, most of the stories from this episode came from him. Like the story with Elaine and Bob. The hearing aid thing actually came from someone that him and his friends knew from high school who wore a hearing aid, and when he didn't know the answer to a question that was said, he would revert back to the hearing aid and use that as an excuse as to not know what they're talking about to get out of answering the question, which I thought would be a good Elaine story. But Kramer's story, and then David Mandela read somewhere something about how, and of course Kramer mentioned this too, he was reading somewhere about Leonardo da Vinci and how, I guess, every 3 hours he would sleep for 20 minutes, and that would help him to be able to basically be awake for an extra 2.5 days. So basically, Kramer said, when I turn 80, I'll be living the equivalent life of 105 years old. So he was trying out these sleeping habits. So he had Jerry wake him up. He had a big date with his girlfriend Connie, who apparently was a mafia princess. Not a good idea, Kramer. But anyway, so when Jerry got back from his double date, Kramer was asleep on the couch, and he woke up and said, "Oh, morning." And then Jerry's like, morning, it's 10:30 at night. And of course, Jerry realized he forgot to give the jacket back, so he's going to have to return it the next day. Well, then Kramer, of course, makes himself breakfast, even though it's 10:30 at night, and Jerry goes to bed. In the middle of the night, Kramer comes into Jerry's apartment, and basically it's like 4 in the morning. He's like, "Whoa, want to go see a movie or something?" It's like, "I have all this free time, I'm bored." It's like, Kramer, he's like, "Tell him get out." It's like, Jerry's not doing the sleeping patterns. Kramer is. So he kicks Kramer out, and I guess Kramer went out for a walk, and without telling Jerry, and act like it's no big deal, he borrowed the Friars Club jacket and fell asleep in a pile of garbage, and he took it to the cleaners. So there's a delay there. And then George said that Hallie, I guess, is putting together some like magic show that she called the Flying Sandos Brothers, which were played by actual juggling and comedy troupes. They're called the Flying Karamazov Brothers, I think is what it's called. They were actually a real, crew to put on like magic shows, but instead they just changed the names of them, of course. So they got the tickets to see that. So they went to go see that magic show. But then, of course, Jerry got his jacket back from the cleaners. But then during the show, one of the brothers, who looked a lot like, he was not played by John Stamos, but he looked a lot like Cousin Stavros from Full House, an episode where Uncle Jesse invited over his one cousin from Greece to come visit, and they're both played by John Stamos, but Stavros was just, that's still my favorite episode of that series. Maybe I'll be talking about that episode someday. Anyways, but they tried to pull off this trick where they took Jerry's jacket and they just tossed it in the crowd saying that it disappeared. Ta-da! Well, Jerry went back to go get the jacket afterwards, and the guys were like, "What jacket? We don't have no jacket. We don't know what you're talking about." And of course, Jerry was kind of pissed about it, and Hallie didn't seem too concerned about the jacket, but Jerry was freaking out because he had to return that jacket to the Friars Club, and that Pat Cooper went out of the way for him to get a membership. So he's got that as a problem now. So we got that. We got Elaine dealing with Bob, and then Kramer, who's dozing off every 2 seconds now, because obviously these sleeping habits aren't quite working in his favor. So he then has a date with his mafia princess girlfriend Connie. And my favorite part of this episode, they were obviously getting it on and whatnot, and she's like, all turned on. But then, because of Kramer's trying out these sleeping habits, they don't work out, he falls asleep on top of her. And the problem is she thinks he's dead. She thought Kramer was dead. So she calls someone without having some other guy find out. I guess it must have been her husband or boyfriend. I don't know what it was. But basically, the thing about her was that she never wanted to go out. She never wanted to go out. She always wanted to stay at the apartment and do stuff there. Obviously, she didn't want to get caught being with him because she'd get in trouble. So, this is horrible to laugh about. But, so, Jerry, of course, comes back, and he sees that they're taking someone out of Kramer's apartment, and he's just like, I don't know what that guy's up to now. But obviously, again, Connie had called someone to call the cops to take away Kramer because they thought he was dead. They took him out to the East River and dumped him in a sack in the East River. That wakes him up. He then breaks free out of the bag, swims up as a boat is coming, and now Kramer's freaking out trying to get out of there. How did they come up with this? Like that's just like a genius Kramer storyline. Like Kramer always has like the goofiest habits, saying he can get away with them, and they all just bite him back in the butt. Oh, dear Lord, that was hilarious. But then, anyways, of course, Jerry was kind of soured by Hallie not being too concerned about the jacket, which, of course, George freaks out about because he's like, oh, no, it's like he wanted to be like, he wanted Hallie to be an it, meaning that both him and Jerry were both going to get married because, remember, they have a pact, and they get married to each other's best friends, basically. But of course, Jerry was kind of souring on it. But then, of course, if they get the jacket back, then, and she said she'll get the jacket back, but if they get the back, maybe, won't be so bad. So, of course, Jerry has to go to the Friars Club and explain to Pat Cooper, which, of course, it's like he was, even in a deleted scene, Pat Cooper just didn't want to hear any other excuses, basically. He was like, now, why did this happen? Well, because I don't hear any excuses and whatnot. So, of course, they're giving Jerry, one more day to find a jacket, or else he had to pay a fine of like $800. But then, he sees the one guy from the magic show there. And sure enough, he's wearing a jacket. And Jerry thinks that's the jacket that he stole. So he chases them down, and they find the jacket, and they realize that, oh, it's not the same jacket. And then, of course, this is actually a little further down. But they basically, chase them down and, find them in the backstage. And then Hallie peers around the corner and says, no, I have the jacket here. I guess whoever had caught it in the crowd thought it was dirty, took it to the cleaners, which is like the third or fourth trip that jacket went to the cleaners, and then returned it. So Jerry got the jacket, all good again. He wants to go out with Hallie again, but she goes, I'll see you guys at the wedding. So unfortunately, she's not in it anymore. And then Elaine, of course, got so sick of Bob that she tried to test his hearing by basically saying, like, oh, I'm into you, I want you so bad. And unfortunately, who happened to walk past to the office was Peterman. And that sneaky son of a gun would then get Elaine 2 tickets to the magic show, to the Flying Santos Brothers magic show. And he told her to take Bob with her. And he said how he heard every single word. And then, of course, basically said, that would be a shame if, you were just trying to play this handicap. Oh, that would be a grounds for dismissal. I always love whenever, peering onto, like, deep thought or, like, told a story. He always, like, sat down or, like, just, like, stepped away, like, just looked off to the side. It was just priceless. So Elaine was screwed. So she ended up going with Bob, and they were sitting in the same section up in the higher-ups, which I believe was probably, I think this was the same theater back in the Beard episode where Elaine went out with that one guy she was trying to convert to be heterosexual. I think it was the same theater, but they go there and they had great view of seats, of course. But then Bob tries to put the moves on Elaine, and he's just immediately going for her chest, so she pushes him off, and he just walks away. Of course, though, his hearing aid fell out, though. So she picked up the hearing aid and put it in to see if it actually worked. Problem, though, was that's the same time where Jerry was getting chased by the Flying Santos brothers for stealing the jacket. When it wasn't the jacket he lost, it was their own jacket. And they escaped out the emergency exit from the loud alarm. I guess it must have really rang in Elaine's ear with the hearing aid. So she was like, and it fell back. A nice little comedic stunt from Julie Louis-Dreyfus. Now, there's an alternate ending, though, where back at the office, like the next day, Bob walks past with Mr. Peterman, and I guess Peterman was originally, well, Elaine couldn't hear because of the ringing, and now they thought that Elaine was putting on an act, not being able to hear things, but I guess Peterman said that he was going to take he was going to take her to Italy, but, you know, he's going to take Bob instead. And of course, he also said that Bob was still hurt by what happened at the magic show the other night. And as, of course, it walks away, and Elaine was upset that Bob got it, she goes, son of a bitch. And then after she said that, though, Bob heard her. He, of course, said, hey, I heard that. And he points his hearing aid and goes, new batteries. So the whole time, Bob was having a hard time hearing, but his hearing aid needed new batteries. And it bit him back in the dust. And then Kramer, of course, returns from the East River, and he calls the police on Connie. And who does Connie call to try to get a lawyer? Jackie Childs. And when he hears that she's trying, that Kramer's the one trying to get her arrested for attempted murder, he goes, I want nothing to do with it. Hangs up. That's it. But that Kramer story, oh my goodness. And the thing too is the behind the scenes thing is the scene where he had to break free out of the bag. So they shot that in 2 locations. They shot, they went to a real bridge and shot the scene where they tossed, they tossed the bag into the water, which for that shot, they put a dummy inside the bag. Now, they shot it, I think, at like Warner Brothers Studios inside some tank for the actual scene where Kramer has to, break free and swim back into the top of the water. Well, they did it in 2 takes, and they were definitely concerned because, they didn't want the bag to get too tight and, Michael Richards would be able to escape and he would, choke and die. But Michael Richards, though, was a certified diver, so they were, not as concerned. And they had some divers down there, scuba divers down there monitoring it to make sure, nothing went wrong. That way if something did go wrong, they would, be able to get them out. Now, they did have, little, thing to help them get oxygen, but it would have been too obvious. He said he didn't want to wear it. So they did it in 2 shots, 2 takes though, because the first take they did, the bag, even though Richard's 6'3", still on the light was kind of light, the bag was too light and he didn't go down far enough. So they put a 40-pound weight, I think it was, inside the bag, and it dropped them straight down to the bottom. And of course, with the water pressure, the bag was tight around him, but he broke free, swam to the top, and of course they had to wait till later that night to shoot the scene when he was trying to swim away from the boat, because one, it needed to be dark, and 2, they had to trash the water also to make it look like the East River, and also to make sure they didn't get the edges of the tank from the top. But it was a nice piece of work there by Michael Richards, and definitely one of my favorite Kramer stories, though, for sure, is this whole Leonardo da Vinci sleep habits, and yet he falls asleep on top of his mafia princess girlfriend. That's so funny. Definitely one of my favorite Kramer moments, for sure. I wouldn't say not my number 1 favorite, but definitely, I'd say top 5, maybe top 3, but, any other fun facts I got here? Let me see here. I talked about the stuff with Kramer, and the scene there. Again, this is also a rare episode where Elaine doesn't share a scene or speak to Kramer or George. Again, the Flying Sandoz brothers were actually played by actual juggling comedy troupe. The Flying Karamazov brothers. Of course, Phil Morris was the last minute, this thing to add in for a lawyer. And of course, the credits were shown, and he was credited with the credits before he was even shown on TV, which was crazy. But yep, that's the Friars Club episode, and that's another disc of Seinfeld we've gone through. We have 6 more episodes left of season 7. And of course, again, the big question is, how will this season end with the story arc here of George getting married? We'll find out next, guys. So, guys, that's the Friars Club, and again, we're also close, as I hyped up in the Cadillac. I cannot wait to talk about that last scene in the final episode of this season. Oh, man, that's going to be so funny. But we'll get there soon, guys. So, guys, again, that is the Friars Club episode. What are your thoughts on the Friars Club episode? Did you enjoy the story with Kramer and the Leonardo da Vinci sleep habits? Did you also enjoy the appearance of Rob Schneider as well? Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. And be sure as always to slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content on my channel. And follow me on Twitter as well at DemandAirboy93. And until then, guys, I am checking out. I'll catch you all later. Have a great rest of your night. And peace out, everybody.